season, and the relievers are deep into repetitive outings and different situations. I think sometimes even guys that have some experience, when you start to log 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different appearances, we're trying to balance like the fine tuning of some of the things that clearly we need to work on and then when to rest. And they're going to have to get back on the horse. So that's been a point of emphasis. Offensively has been a little up and down lately. I think it'll be nice. I know I'm looking forward to Chase Williams having an opportunity to get back onto the field. So I continue to discuss the dynamic nature of what he does, and that's a huge part of what we thought would help us this year. We've got 9 guys on the injury report, and I'm sure we're not alone in that, but trying to keep guys healthy and keep people available on the field is a challenge when you get to this time of the year. And as these players advance into professional baseball, it becomes that much more challenging to learn how to manage body and work and how to play the game in a manner that allows you to stay on the field. So clearly we're going through a little bit of that, but we'll have our work cut out. They've got a couple guys that really run the bases well. Like most good teams, they've got balance in the lineup. You're going to have 3 or 4 good left-handed hitters. I think their most dangerous guys might be right-handed, and those guys also run well. Good variety. They throw a lot of strikes on the pitching side of things. Very good strike out to walk ratio as a staff. Good young left-hander that they've started. So again, work cut out, and this is what this season will look like from here on out. So we have to be on point with everything. Jamie, Bellini, Mendez. It was good to see Jamie kind of start to recapture the consistency and a little bit better command. We need that to continue. Bellini never got to the good breaking ball. He just could not quite find that and land that. And honestly, out of the gate, you guys were probably looking at me like I was crazy. I thought Mendez had as good a stuff as he's had going into a game early in that game. And it just seemed like Wake Forest was on everything, and they were spitting it. Some of the secondary pitches, we couldn't consistently land them. And that got away from us a little bit in the last 2 games. But reset, long day of travel. I think we're Atlanta, Roanoke, and then bus from Roanoke down to Blacksburg. So it'll probably be 8:30 or so until we kind of settle in tonight. So full day, but the guys are fine. This has been a tough stretch, clearly, but I sense no real out of the ordinary frustration with the group. And they have been consistent in stretches clearly throughout the year, and we've just hit a patch where we haven't been as crisp offensively, and then the stuff on the mound, just with the command and maybe getting underneath some of our breaking balls and not finishing pitches probably led me to allude to the fact of a little tiredness, and we lightened some of the things we did for them yesterday in hopes that no practice today. So by the time we get there tonight, I know the travel's tough, but they kind of had a day off from a throwing and workload sense.
You mentioned how much that you guys have had to use the relievers. Just with that, how important is it for the weekend starters to eat up innings this weekend and moving forward like they had in those first 5 weeks?
Yeah, it's huge. And, I rarely have gone into a season where you have we had 4 legitimate starters, and Rowan was built up to be the 5th, and it turned out to be Crest. And, with Crest down, Rowan was also down, and he hasn't quite been the same since he came back. So it just adds another point of emphasis to these guys to lengthen it out and go. And as that game was evolving Saturday, I'm sure, and we were asking ourselves the same question, like how much is enough for Bellini, because we were trying to let him capture it and stretch it out a little bit, even though it wasn't going well. We've seen him not get out of the gates, and then by the 4th or 5th inning, this guy's on point with everything, and it didn't get to that extent last Saturday. So Brett, yeah, it is really, really important, and this team was built on the quality of the starting pitching and then enough out of the bullpen to try to make this thing difficult. And I think overall we played sound defense. I think when you look around the horn, the guys have shown the ability to make the above average play. We have not solidified the third base spot. That's one we got to keep pushing those guys along and helping them develop. And we've tried 2-3 guys now to give them a shot. But the defense does support the ability of the starting pitchers to lengthen. And I think for the most part, we've managed that pretty well. But this thing was built. Each team's different. And this one going in, we knew that the strength of the starting pitching needed to really be a true asset to us to then get to some of the pieces in the bullpen to finish it up and lengthen things out and simplify the game on the backside. And we've seen it, but recently not quite as deep with some of the starts.
Link, you mentioned you mentioned some of the offensive struggles recently, and the strikeouts kind of stand out a bit. Is there something you see that maybe they need to change their approach at the plate? Are guys pressing too hard? What's going on there?
Well, the pitch recognition is the most difficult part of this whole operation. And when guys are not seeing some of the good secondary pitches, it makes it look obscure when you're seeing guys chase pitches out of the zone. And once that happens, it seems like at times we're conscious of maybe not being adjustable enough to handle the secondary stuff. And then it looks like you're vulnerable to some of the velocity at times. I think we had 5 freshmen in the lineup the other night. I did not expect that. I knew Miles and I knew Carnes were going to have a chance to be in there. But with some of the things we're dealing with, those guys haven't seen this before. And we've seen flashes from DeLamore and flashes from Hankerson. But just the recognition and the variety of stuff, and then the relievers, you may get one crack at a reliever when you get later in the game, and the vision and the recognition and the decision making on swing take, if that's off a tick, you're going to see the strikeouts mount and foul balls early in the count or taking good pitches to hit early in the count. We remember strike 3, but a lot of these strikeouts are built before you get to strike 3. And I see it. And that's a complex answer to your question, but that pitch recognition in game with the lights on center stage, it can be the biggest challenge in the sport. And it's very average, and I take you to grow and log pitches and see things that improves a little bit.
Link, you talked about the team response. How do you the message? How do you message to your team when there are real things that kind of need to be fixed and addressed? But also, I think you understood you weren't going to play at the level you were for a 55-game season or however long the regular season goes.
Well, I try to find when to really push the button and be very demanding and tough, and then I also recognize when they don't need that. And I think controlling the atmosphere of what I feel and what I see is important. And, there's times you need to remind them of some of the really good things they have done, because when you lose a couple games in a row, it feels like the end of the world. And that's not the case. And this thing can flip very quickly. And there's probably a lot of teams in the country that would trade places with where we stand. I don't like how things have gone lately, but you look at moments where maybe you stole a game here or stole a game there, and that counteracts some of the times when things clearly aren't going your way. So there are times in the length of this when you're playing 70 games, you have to be a little bit more positive and maybe ease up and talk about some of the positive things. And then there are times when things are going really good that I have been very firm. And even with you guys, things were rolling for a while, and I saw glaring deficiencies in what we were doing, but you might have gotten away with it. So, some of those lessons right now are very apparent, and in some cases, their eyes are more open and they're more apt to listen because they now see what we were talking about when we went a long time without losing a game. So you just have to, managing things, you have to find moments to really press, and then you have to have moments where they might need a little build up or something to try to relax them a little bit so they don't continue to try to force it and press.
Coach, you often talk about the different approaches in hitting. Is there a different approach that's needed when there's runners on base or runners in scoring position?
Well, the tendency might be that you see more secondary pitches when you have traffic. Now, like I've talked about, I can't see what this looks like to them. So we try to give them, if you want to think about it in terms of golf, like what club are you trying to hit based on the distance and the shot and the shape and the knee? Adjusting the secondary pitches, sitting on secondary pitches, or trying to eliminate the secondary pitches just to make sure you're on the fastball if you feel like that secondary pitch is maybe a little too much for you, or if the other guy's not landing. So you may tend to be a little bit more aggressive, and maybe you try to adjust to the early count secondary pitches to make sure you're putting pitches in play. There are guys that do go up there from time to time and feel like they're going to get a breaking ball or a changeup, and they kind of sit on that. So, Jordan, we try in game in the middle of those at bats. We're not giving them a signal of what pitch we think is coming. As a hitter, I did not want that whatsoever. And they do have data. So when they go into this stuff, they're going to have a great idea. You look at Virginia Tech, like most good teams, there's 10 or 11 arms in play. You can just go down the list and you know who those guys are. And we give them good heat maps. We give percentages so they have an idea. But how Max Williams or Gage or Lodis or Carnes or Miles Bailey, like what that looks like to them when they're standing there also is a factor that none of the metrics and none of the analytics and none of the heat maps and none of it might look different to Max versus Miles. So they have to then apply the approach that they feel like works and gives them the best chance to function pitch by pitch of the at-bat.
Coach, go ahead, Brett.
I know you talked about the pitch recognition earlier when it comes to the strikeouts, but also with the lack of extra base hits the last few games. I know you talked about that in Gainesville. How important is the pitch recognition to that too? Because I think you've talked about you have the physicality to be able to produce that.
Yeah, if you're not going to recognize it and know where the spin of that slider is taking the slider, is it a good pitch to hit? Like if you're making bad decisions, the chances of those being balls that are really driven, slim. So all of the visual tools that you have in the timing, and are you timing a fastball, hoping you're in a good enough position to adjust to a secondary pitch? If you are, is the spin or what you see out of the hand this, that? How does the changeup tumble? In those couple hundredths of a second, like, does it feel like a pitch early in the count that you can barrel? And if you can barrel it, there's a good chance that ends up as an extra base hit. Not always. If you don't barrel it, the chances of something, in the double, home run, triple category, it goes down. So you are hunting some of that exit velocity. It's so critical. And, I think of following Cam's spring and hearing the Astros manager talk about the things he did that showed that organization that he was ready to be a major league player out of the gate. That made me as proud as anything, because the things we were talking about, I almost felt like he was showing that group that he could do in game. And it's not easy. So critical. And you try to find things like, as you're watching that pitcher warm up, when you're standing on deck, then you're in the box, that leads you into a better opportunity to somehow time and track and figure out something. The earlier you can figure out that it is a secondary pitch, the better off you are. Is it a change in posture on a secondary pitch? Is it something you see with the hand, or does the hand climb a little bit on a secondary pitch? Those are that you probably see in the box. And the earlier you can see it, the better chance you have. On the pitching side, hiding all of that and making those hitters have zero idea until that ball's halfway or further. And if the spin is really good at times, you can't even tell at that point. And it may be so late that you see the really weird, bad swings. So a year ago, I developed an entire presentation just on that, because you're constantly trying to find ways to help guys decode and then help the pitchers hide what they're doing. And it is hard. If you're not doing that, the extra base hit ratio way down, the strikeout ratio usually up. And the better the stuff, the better the velo, then the more urgency there is to make sure you're on time with the fastball. You become a little more vulnerable. So I call it the cat and mouse. And, that's what we're in the middle of. We're trying to hide it on the mound best we can, and we're trying to hunt it at the plate with all the visual tools you have.
With a guy like Chase back, and not just the rest he can give somebody in the outfield, but his threat on the base path, how big is that, especially when what we're talking about, trying to generate some opportunity and some spark?
Yeah, I can't wait to see this, and I don't know that I've ever coached a player that plays the game so fast and so hard that you're trying to safely get him through these games. Like the ways he's gotten injured, I've just never seen the explosiveness. I've never seen the collision at home plate, to watch that play and how hard he dove in there. And he shouldn't have. You don't dive headfirst into home plate. We all know that. But sometimes just the intensity of the game, it feels like that's the best way to get there. And it's hard. It's hard for guys to shy away from it. When we landed him and meeting with his family, I went down and met with the family, and I said, "This is an open book of how I like to play baseball. You've got it." So just the running and the threats, and he's not great with the short game yet, but it's coming along. It was just something he didn't have a great feel for, but I think everybody's pulse rises when that guy's at the plate. Defensively, it changes it. When that guy's on the bases, whoever's hitting is probably going to get a more distracted pitcher because of all the stuff that they know he can do. And the guy hasn't finished. He's got 19 at bats. So I'm trying the sliding, he's got to slide earlier. He's got to slide feet first at times. Even watching him in batting practice, he slid a couple times in his circuits around the bases. And I'm watching that because the guy slide. You don't have people that have to slide that early. Like you slide and pop up. Well, he needs to start his slide 20 feet out of the base to actually do it correctly at the end. And those are tricky things. So I haven't coached a player before where you're trying to find details of health and safety, but yet still let them go play their game. That is his game.
Coach, you often talk about that you're not in a strike throwing competition. So I'm just curious, how do you balance pounding the zone and not giving up walks versus, throwing stuff out of the zone and making it look like a strike, but obviously, it's not for the hitter.
Yeah, and I say that sometimes to calm them down a little bit because we're going to walk some people. I mean, Virginia Tech's been really good at it, and what have they walked? 156 people. So you don't want them to get to a point as a staff where they feel like they're aiming and hoping that we're throwing strikes. That's not at all the mindset I want these guys in at all. Statistically, does it add up when you're walking 6, 7, 8, 9? Of course it does. Of course it does. But you want them thinking of the execution of their really good stuff, not aiming and hoping. That's what I want. And if you're trying to throw as many strikes as you can throw, you're probably not like pitching. And there are times when these things cannot. We got burned on an 0-2 pitch the other day. So when I say it's not a strike throwing competition, like that ball was supposed to bounce on home plate. And that ball was center cut and Lawson hit it off the scoreboard. I think it was Lawson. So you have to be able to get it in the zone at times, and then you cannot have it in the zone at times. So you are trying to get maybe chase strikes, but from a targeting perspective, you have to have the periphery of the zone and above the zone. And at times, man, you might have to challenge and ram it right in there, but there are times it cannot be in the zone. Cannot be in the zone. And when I told you guys the other day, I couldn't tell at times if we're pitching out of a 2-0 count or an 0-2 count. Yeah, some of the things that happened Tuesday night were examples of that. Like the 0-2 breaking pitch cannot look at all like the 2-0 breaking ball if you're going to get good hitters. So that's my point with it. And I don't want the guys to go out there like hoping that they're throwing strikes. Go pound it and execute with your best stuff. And if it's not good enough, we'll go get somebody else. That's kind of been my point. I don't want them to pitch scared.
You mentioned earlier you have 9 guys in the injured list. I think one that we haven't asked you about is Holtz. Just I don't think he's been available for a little bit. Just where's he at?
He's probably at halftime of the getting better. There's not even really a target date right now. So weird. He's got a weird thing, and it's not a traditional like arm problem. It's a quirky one. So I don't think we're close yet. We're not close on Blade and Plane yet either. I hope Jackson West is coming along. Yeah, that's just a spark he brings. Whether it's catching DH and whatever, it's just a nice spark to have. I don't know yet. That's kind of a day-to-day thing on how he actually feels. So we'll see. Yeah, but it's a lot. You start on this thing and there's 2 guys on the injury report, and it just all of a sudden it lengthens out. Phil does a good job with the email. We have guys in different phases of recovery, and it's a lengthy document right now.
One other guy I know you have, I think a few weeks ago, talked about Evan having a decision to make. I guess has a decision been made? Is that still up in the air?
Well, the decision either way probably keeps him out for the year. So he's got to decide what he wants to do, but I do not see him participating again this year. So tough, man. You're rolling, things are good, and then that dang Tuesday night at home, you got kind of the buildup of how things have gone, and tough for the kid. Tough.
You mentioned the spark that Jackson gives you with the way that he approaches his ABs. Getting Jason the lineup on Tuesday and kind of a similar profile to Jackson, was that kind of the reason that he got the opportunity to get his first start?
100%. 100%. And the other guys are good. They're good players. Like Fisher and McCauley, they're good. They're good players. And I feel guilty because I haven't quite gotten it out of them yet. I haven't. I've seen flashes. We did not play good defense over there. And Fisher's he's a savvy, good baseball player at any of those positions. I think those guys are pressing. And my intention by trying to figure out what's right is not to force them into pressing more. It's an obligation to try to help the team solidify what we're doing. And Barberi, the matchup, just at least out of the gate, really favored the left-handed hitter. And Jace, every time he's gone in there, he's competed in battle like West. So we tried it and made a really nice play, and kind of another funky ground ball play he made. And, unfortunately the double play balls were what they were. I questioned myself, even with one out, should I have asked him to maybe, try to base hit bunt or do something? But I was so eager for this kid to get in there and get some ABs. And I thought maybe there'd be something, he shoots a ball into left field or some of the things we've seen him do. He's going to be a really good player for us, Jace. And the other two are really good players. I just have to do a better job of trying to help them, bring that potential onto the field a little bit more. And, that's on me.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Link.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Coach, I guess I kind of just wanted to kind of ask, how do you kind of, or do you kind of draw on your past experiences being the head coach at other programs, kind of when you're dealing with the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows kind of a season? Is there like, I guess, like when it comes to you maybe like laying off at times, or maybe like being a little bit more on it at times, like does that kind of come from maybe like your past experiences coaching, or is it like, I guess, being in a new season is just kind of like different?
Well, you do draw on things that have happened before to you. I mean, last year couldn't have been going any better, and we went to Clemson and had three of the worst endings to 3 games I've ever seen in my life. Some of these guys went through that. This hasn't been like that yet. Then you do look at the players and what maybe each player may need. So I look at the holistic team atmosphere, and then I don't know how Miles Bailey is going to react. So I start to learn what I can do with each one of the guys to try to help them along. So the team is an accumulation of the 40 individuals. And I mean, I can't nitpick what's going on inside the brain of all 40, but I think I have a decent pulse of that. And you try to find moments to prod them along, get on somebody, pick somebody up a little bit, calm the team down, like light a fire under the team. Like those are things you learn. No two teams are the same. There may be experiences that you go through with teams that are similar. Our Notre Dame team in 2022 maybe ascended to we were the number 1 ranked team in the country, and that was difficult to achieve there. And they had flown a flag. Any team that was number 1, there's a flag kind of in front of the football stadium with a 1 that somebody in the athletic department is the number 1 team in the country. And not too long after that, we went on a road trip and got swept, and that flag came down. And so you think about these moments and how you get back on the horse and draw on some of those things. And I think if anything at those times, maybe I try to lighten it a little bit, because the pressure that they feel when they feel failure, if you judge the win and loss, if it's failure, like they feel like they're failing. So sometimes they might need a laugh or a story or something like that when it feels like all of a sudden the world's coming in, falling down on top of you. So, I do draw on those things. I commented the other day, like we had a team a couple years ago that didn't lose 2 games the entire season. And how, like, that resilience to like figure out a way to overcome it and come back. I've kind of seen a wide array of things. So it's a great question. And yes, I do try to draw on in my 25 years experiences that feel similar. And, how did the team respond to maybe what I did to try to bring them out of it? Or when they think they're on top of the world and I know they're not playing well, sometimes they need to be knocked down a peg, not because of the result on the field, but because of the fact that I see a lack of execution that will come back to get you. And I did talk about that this year because I saw some of these things happen before it might have been on display for the world. So it's a good question.